With just 2 rounds left in the championship and everything yet to be decided in the top five, the RCI TV GT4 Team Championship rolls into Japan for Suzuka for the penultimate round of the championship. Hello, everyone, and wherever you are, we hope that you're well on this Thursday evening and are ready to enjoy some excellent racing around a premier racing circuit. I'm Jesse Lee, joined by Tim Peck, and as always, Christian Stricker in the booth with you once again. And tonight, it is going to be racing in the dark as qualifying has already started here tonight. Tim Peck, welcome in, and we have a lot to talk about.
We do have a lot to talk about. The first thing I do want to mention is it is round 5 of this championship, of course, and we are at Suzuka in Japan here today. And we will see in a minute, once qualifying has ended, just how close these standings are. So it's a very exciting race, and personally, I cannot wait to see the outcome of this one, Jesse.
Yes, indeed. Standings coming up as always after qualifying. All the drivers out on the track right now, getting some laps in. It has been a fraught undertaking, a very, very difficult week of replanning and retuning all of these cars. The 1.8 update that hit just about a week ago threw them for a loop at Brands Hatch. Well, here it's the first big track that any of these drivers would have been to, and almost all of them, Tim Peck, have found that their setup needed big adjustments.
Yeah, it must be a very stressful thing to have as well, especially so close to the race, just to have the entire feel of the car changed. I know I was actually doing some practice myself the other day just to see how the cars felt, and they feel completely different. So to start off by picking a car that you're really comfortable with at the beginning of the championship, and then literally halfway through having every single car change, that is a really stressful thing to come over. But a lot of the teams have managed quite well. I do understand that today there's actually a bit of a struggle in particular. I believe the Alpines are really struggling with a lack of grip. So you will see across the rest of this qualifying session, and I imagine most of the race as well, there'll be a little slide on the corners, as are most of the GT4s currently, which is, as you were saying earlier, Jesse, not something you'd usually say about a GT4 car.
Yeah, well, of course, the 1.8 update brought a whole host of physics updates, and some of them for the better, some of them for the worst for certain manufacturers, and it all sort of balances out. But keep in mind, all of these teams picked their car before they knew the 1.8 update was coming. Nobody had any idea that that update would come out literally in the middle of the RCI current seasons for the fall championship. Nobody knew that. Nobody could plan around it. The same thing these GT4 drivers are dealing with today, GT3 will be dealing with tomorrow. It is everyone in the same boat. But even still, I have heard almost all of the Alpines, which in our opinion, I think, Tim, I think we agree on this, have been the stars of the season. We didn't expect a lot out of the tiny Alpine, but we have gotten a lot out of them. A couple of them in the top 5 of the championship running well. This week might not be the case. I've heard nearly every single Alpine has struggled around this racetrack.
I remember us saying at the beginning of the season, we saw all these drivers in the Alpines, and we were saying it's such an interesting choice because we didn't think they were going to perform particularly well across the season, and boy oh boy did they. I mean, the first 3 races, the Alpine looks like the car to beat. They were absolutely unstoppable, and we saw actually last week they did struggle a little bit around Brands Hatch. Of course, that as well was after the update, so the car would have already been starting to change. But I think it's interesting what you said about how at the beginning of the season there was no way of knowing that the cars were going to change. There was no way of knowing that the update was going to hit right in the middle of the season. And to be honest with you, I don't think it would have mattered either way. I mean, how do you prepare for an update where all of the cars are going to change? It's just, it really has been a skill, I think, for the drivers that have made it look so natural and so easy. I think that's definitely a skill that they should be proud to have.
Funnily enough, it's a skill that real-world GT teams have to deal with. Mid-season BOP updates often change the dynamic of your car. You have to go back to the drawing board in the workshop, and in a lot of cases, in the real world, you go back to the simulator to get a handle on your car. You wouldn't think that a couple of kilograms would make a difference, but I guarantee you, in a thoroughbred racing car, it absolutely does. Even if it's GT4, it doesn't have quite the aero of some of the other cars. being told some of the cars now are looser than they've ever been. Some of the cars are tighter than they've ever been. And I think we've seen that in this practice session. Or in the practice session that led up to this qualifying session. Tim, you and I were looking at some of them trying to come through the triangle. They were halfway sideways, almost losing it through the triangle.
They do look very reckless coming through every single corner. You can just see the backs of the car really is not sticking to the ground the way you necessarily want it to. Someone who is definitely having the car stick to the ground the way they want it to is Wolf Machushka, who is currently on the provisional pole for this qualifying session. He's got a 4/10 gap as well to Deepers in the Porsche behind, so he's already looking pretty comfortable in this Mercedes.
Mercedes was always going to be one of the cars to beat around Suzuka. Of course, a very big track, perhaps the longest track in ACC currently, and the championship leading Pink Performance 25 AMG. It's crazy to say that, but they are indeed championship leaders after what has been a roller coaster, mixed bag of emotions of a season. And they find themselves at the top. The 123 FFS Racing Team did not join us 1 week ago. They're back this week, but now find themselves no longer in the driver's seat in the championship. About halfway done through the session, Wolf Matushka still up front by over 4/10. In fact, Garrett Fisher in third place in the 878 is about 5/10 of a second. And in fourth place, Schumann more than a second back. Nobody even close, but I don't think that's going to last very long. Of course, we talked about a week ago, everyone trying to get a handle on the new physics. This week, it's sort of still that. And this is a very different track than Brands Hatch, I think we can all accept. But in addition to that, the setups that they might have had, they've come in here and realized that they were in a little bit of trouble and they were going to have to completely rewrite them. I think they're still trying to get that done with qualifying here.
Killian Ryan Meenan in the 1-2-3 has now put a time in as well. I noticed he hadn't quite managed to get a lap done earlier on, but he's now literally 5/10 off Machushka. So that is sort of, there's two groups forming almost. You've got Machushka and then the 4 people behind him that are within that 5/10. Then you've got this nice big gap that you're talking about of about a second, and it just goes to show, I think, the people who drive these GT4s basically every season are a little bit more comfortable with them, and then those that are maybe discovering them a little bit more, or maybe just really uncomfortable. I noticed we've talked already about the Alpine, how they have been struggling, and I don't see a single Alpine towards the top of the leaderboard there. I think P10, yep, 323 Roberts. He's the top Alpine right now, and that is just something we're not used to seeing this season.
No, certainly way down the order. Yan Yo, by the way, in the 303 Ginetta leads the silver class over Phil Roberts in the 323. Watts in third place in that category. But between Roberts and Watts, Wisniewski in the 727, the leading AM driver, over Bautier in the 16 Chevrolet. Got to go all the way back to 20th for Marshall to find the third quickest in the AM class. Of course, 3 different classes, Pro, Silver, and AM, all on the track at the same time. And usually near the back end of the season, Tim Peck, we normally see less draw for the races. You get a sort of what am I trying to say here? You get a smaller field, but not quite so much this season. It's been consistent.
It has been. I was actually just noticing that we still have a similar amount of players to how we started, which is always quite nice. You do like it when everyone tries to see it through to the end as much as possible. So I'm very glad that we have retained a lot of the players this time round. I have noticed actually as well in a lot of these races that the AM Silver and Pro drivers, they're all of course mixed into the same race, so there's no different races happening at the same time. But I'd say honestly, the AMs have done really well to hold their own. Like every single race, it's always split quite nicely through the field, and to a certain extent some people may say, oh, maybe they shouldn't be AM, but I don't know, I think this is just a case of the AMs have really come out of their shell and performed a little bit. It's always nice to see a bit of a mix through the field, so I think a lot of people will be proud of their performance. I know there were a couple of AMs that did actually get promoted at the beginning of the season. Of course, that was the Ginettas and a couple of other cars, so they in particular, I think, will be very happy with how their season has gone so far, and just to really see the improvement they've had in general.
Well, there's the other part of that as well. You can get promotion after the season. Of course, late in the season, there's no reason to promote somebody at this point. There, like Tim said, there were several promotions from AM into silver after the first or second race. But now, wherever you are in class is where you're going to finish. But I think you could make an argument for the 727 that they could be promoted into the silver class. We'll have to see if that happens for GT4 next season. As everyone continuing here, 3.5 minutes left in the session. Matushka still leads 2-minute 11.145. The quickest. Mark Deeper still second place. Garrett Fisher is on a little bit of a flyer now as they're into Spoon. We'll see if they can carry that all the way back to the flag. Schumann has jumped inside the top 5 and has taken the provisional pole for silver over Johan Roberts. That is your top 3 in silver now. It hasn't changed anywhere else. We're going to stay with Garrett Fisher, the boring but fast 878. If there's one consistent car in GT4, it might be this particular car, but I don't know. That might have been invalidated.
I think that might have invalidated his lap, but we'll see when he goes across the line this second here. He has lost quite a bit of time there as well when doing that, and we'll just see he's about to come across the line now, so we'll see if that is an improvement. It was a slight improvement, but it was not enough to overtake Deepers ahead. But Deepers himself actually on his own quick lap here. Let's see if that will be enough to get Machushka as he also comes across the line. And he will be. He just manages to pit Machushka. That's 0.08 of a second in it there, and Deepers will now be the one to sit on pole for the beginning of the race if Machushka can't improve. So funnily enough there, Fisher was the one who we thought was going to maybe pip out both Deepers and Machushka, but it turns out that Deepers actually was cooking up a little lap of his own now.
Felix Deepers for Lutz Motorsports getting it done in the Porsche, not the car that we would normally associate with sweeping or long straightaways. And of course the sweeping corners helping, and that's just an excellent lap, nearly breaking into the 2-minute 10 mark. What can Wolf Matushka, what can Fisher manufacture here? I was trying to guesstimate how much time Garrett Fisher lost. I reckon Fisher lost about 3/10, maybe even a little bit more. They could pick that back up. They could find themselves in the fight for pole position. I'm a little surprised at FFS Racing in the 123 that they're nearly 6/10 off of the overall pace here, and it's not looking good for their championship hopes thus far. But even still, they have a little bit of time left to play here. Keep in mind, all flying laps will count as Watts goes to second in silver and 10th overall. Final couple minutes, got to get everything here, and don't invalidate your lap now.
Yeah, I believe the 1, 2, 3 isn't on a current improvement lap right now, but they should have one more lap after since they are about to cross the line. Speaking of improvements, though, I believe Stevenson 871 is also on a flying lap right now and is about to improve, so we'll see where they can put themselves in the Chevrolet. Of course, we always say this in this season every week, but the Chevrolet has not been performing as well as we expect it to so far, but this might be a changing point. Stevenson now is going to come across the line. We'll see where he's able to put the car. He's up about 0.6 of a second, so that is going to put him up into 6th place. So a huge improvement there from Stevenson, managing to gain 5 positions, and that will start him that little bit further ahead than he was going to, which will definitely be an advantage in this race. Of course, it's not every track which qualifying matters, but you do always want to start as far ahead as possible, because then it's less positions you have to take. And we know that these GT4s and a lot of these drivers as well in the top 10 are very good at defending. So the less people you have to overtake, the better it is.
Well, Wolf Matushka trying to improve, trying to get back onto the pole position. It doesn't really matter, honestly, if you start on the front row. It's good enough. You don't need to be in the pole position. We've actually seen in previous races it actually being more advantageous to start second. So I'm curious if Matushka knows that, and I'm curious if maybe this is just trying to get more points in the championship. It would be very hard to turn down more points. It's looking like a good lap. What does the peak performance AMG have as they come to the line? And not good enough. That's going to be an invalidated lap, and that will end the challenge by Pink Performance there. All laps do count running up to the line. Got about 8 cars left to come to the line.
I think if Machushka can hold on to second place here, which I expect he will, just looking at where some of the other people are on their deltas, I don't think anyone here is improving by too much, but we will see, of course. This is the 1-2-3 McLaren, which we know has been very fast on every other track, so we'll see if they can improve. I think their delta is currently negative, although they definitely have some time to get in this last couple of corners. This could make the difference between third or fourth here, as there is only a couple of hundredths of a second between them, but they are going to pull into the pits here, so we'll not be going for the fastest lap. But Machushka, actually, I believe it was him at Brands Hatch that had this amazing start. And we do see Machushka doing this a lot in that 25 Mercedes. He likes to really throw himself into the first corner, whether it's around the outside or down the inside. We've seen it a couple of times, I believe. Silverstone at the beginning of the season, he did it on Fisher right in the first race, in the first lap. He sent himself flying through. So, like you were saying, it's not essential to start on pole here. And Machushka in particular probably isn't too unhappy that he won't be. Of course, there is the points benefit. If you start on pole, then I think it's 6 extra points you gain in the championship. It might be 3 or 4. I don't know the exact numbers. That's your job, Jesse. But yeah, so I think Machushka is certainly not going to be upset that he's starting second. He's definitely got a good start on the run up to turn 1 here.
Well, we talked about how we got here. Well, let's show you how the drivers got here. Pink Performance took the championship lead last week after FFS Racing was not taking part. Pink Performance did really well, as a matter of fact, at Brands Hatch. 210 points for them. FFS Racing, 8 points behind them. The 123, of course, is on the grid today, and we'll start on the second row. Boring but fast in the 878 with 188 points, not out of this championship. And I'm going to have to say that a few more times, I'm afraid. Fourth place, Jesus is my teammate 304 with 185 points. NSN Racing and the Triple R Academy, or excuse me, NSN Racing in fifth place has 184 points. They're also not out of this championship just yet with 2 rounds left to go. In sixth place, the Triple R Academy Tryhards, 373 with 154 points. They find themselves 20 points ahead of the pole sitter for today, Lutz Motorsports number 99 with 134. 1 point behind them, the SS 1122 112. Try to say that really fast with 133 points. The Sin Ministers 871 with 128, and of course the HWT Motorsport 24 Alpine at 118 points. So we showed you the top 5, very much still in it. What about the back half of the pro grid? The Concha Bunts Aston team, the 913, also tied with 118 points. That's a tie for 10th as it would turn out. And then the Underground Racing League on 37 and the Big Ones Esports Club with 34. Everyone else has left the championship.
And of course, it's not just the pros racing. We also have the silvers here as well. So here is their championship currently. Race Ventura Rally Tryhards in the Alpine. They're currently with 214 points in first place in the silver championship. So like we said, the Alpine's been performing very well so far this season. Temporal Name Motorsport, they're currently in second with 205 points. Wild Things Racing is in third place. They're in a Ginetta, which has also been performing extremely well so far. Going back to fourth, we've got Redline Racing League. They're in the Porsche, followed by the Concha Bunts B team in the BMW. They've got 158 points, actually tied with Saw Buckets, who are in sixth place in the Alpine. So that's going to be another close fight that we're probably going to watch towards the end of the season. The second Ginetta team, Tader's Pork Pie English Mustard, are currently in seventh. John Daddy, the other BMW team, with 132 points, are in eighth. Wild Things Racing SS are currently in ninth, and Eliminania Aiken Esports and the Aston Martin, they're currently in 10th, just 1 point behind the Alpine ahead. And I believe both of these teams are also out of the championship. So moving on to the AM, we have Wheelbarrow Racing Team in the Aston Martin. They currently lead the AM Championship with 264 points. Redline, the BMW team, they have 232 points in second place. The Chevrolet Camaro R4F is currently in third. Shuffle Sport is in fourth, and Turn 1 Heroes, there are BMW GT4s in the AM split. We see them having a lot of battles on track, so keep your eyes peeled this race. And then Smelly Candids are currently in sixth in the Mercedes with 92 points.
Couple of updates from the field. Sword Buckets is not in the race today. They will be back for the finale, so that's unfortunate there. And I just want to talk about the John Daddy team. Go all the way back to race number one. They got 10 penalty points in that race alone and have not got a single additional point in the subsequent 3 or 4 weeks of racing. That is incredible, the turnaround that that team had on the cusp of being bounced out of the championship by hitting the license point limit to right now still in it in the penultimate round without gaining a single additional point. I can truly say I couldn't do it.
That must take a lot of discipline to go from having 10 penalty points. That's basically the limit. I think it's 15 penalty points and you're disqualified from the championship. So they've really had to, I guess, give themselves a lot of discipline in the most recent races. Of course, there's no saying that everyone has to get penalty points anyway. And in an ideal world, no one would get penalty points. But sometimes these things happen, accidents happen, especially at Silverstone where we started the race off dry and then it got wet. So there were a lot of cars sliding around and those points do start to pick up. So a big well done to them for, although picking up a lot of points in that first round, they haven't managed to pick up any more since. And that in itself is quite an achievement because, as I just said, it's very easy to accidentally pick up 1 or 2 points just by lightly tapping someone when you don't mean to here.
Well, 1 week ago, we came on air talking about contingency plans and potential issues. Well, it is my pleasure to report 1 week on that that is not the case here tonight. We expect to have absolutely zero problems. The Kunos team were hard at work all weekend long to get the sim in a state where it was a bit more stable for online play, and they have done just that. They did a lot of research on their own. They enlisted some of the bigger ACC communities to help as well, us included, and all of that. They were able to trace the issue, fix the issue, and it is now a non issue. So, as you've noticed, there's been no issues in practice and qualifying. We expect no issues in the race. Everything restored in working order. You love to see it. Well, it is a very, very warm night here in Japan at 9:03 p.m. in sim time. Still 28 degrees track temperature, the ambient matching that. No rain expected tonight. The one pit stop for every team where they will take on their second driver. And it is the 99 Porsche Lutz Motorsports up front. They needed a shot in the arm, that 99, and they have got it tonight. But I'm telling you, the second place car usually wins the fight into turn one. Will that be the case tonight? We'll have to find out. This man, Benjamin Schumann, in the Temporal Name Motorsports number 30, taking the pole in silver. Watts and Yo, the top three. And what about the 727 in AM? They've done just about everything they could to win this championship. They might have a shot to clinch tonight. We will have to pay attention to that. All these storylines and more coming at you tonight. 1 hour, 20 minutes of racing, Tim Peck. Who's your money on for the win in pro?
Oh, for the win in pro, I think Machushka's in for a really good chance. Of course, you can't discount the people behind Fisher and Noble in the Aston Martin and the McLaren. They're both very good drivers as well. I think Noble might have a very good shot as well going into turn one. Of course, he'll be starting in the same line as Machushka, so I think both of them will massively benefit off turn one. But I'm very excited to see. I think all four of those pro drivers in the top there are all very strong contenders. But if I had to give it to someone, I think I'd give it to Machushka here. It just, so far, it looks like it's playing into his hands. He looks very confident on the track. He's, well, we assume he's got where he wants to start. Of course, pole wouldn't have been anywhere to turn your nose up at, but it's very easy to get a good start from second here. So I think I'd have to hand it to Machushka today.
I'm going to go to the second row and the fourth place driver. I think FFS wins the race today and makes it a virtual deadlock going into the final round. I think Mike Noble is going to come over all Mike Noble tonight and absolutely put it on the field. Keep in mind, Noble wasn't the one qualifying that car. That was Ryan Meenan. So now Noble in the car. Sometimes I've seen that man do magic before. Why not tonight? And before we get the green flag, just want to remind all of you that you can like, subscribe, hit the bell for more GT racing content. We'll be back with you on Friday night for GT3s, and a big thank you to our partners, Race Department, AK Informatica, Driver 61, Fanatec, and Sim Racing GP. More information about those lovely people after the race tonight.
And they're just going to come through the last couple of corners now. This is a very tight chicane, but luckily they're doing it quite slowly and will not have to be starting beforehand. But we'll just see them come through the last couple of corners, and then they'll be onto the main straight, where of course they'll start. The guys on the right, actually, they should be in first and third. It looks like they're dropping back a bit, but they will be able to come through now. Sometimes there are a little bit of issues with the way ACC starts up, but this is not one of those nights. Of course, they're now returned to their respective places, and we'll have to keep our eyes peeled here and see what happens. We're all waiting to see if Machushka can get the much better run up here into turn one, or whether Deepers will be able to hold it ahead. The start-finish line is very far up this straight here, so we do need to wait a little bit for them to cross it. They're just about to come across it now, and we'll see who manages to capitalise. So here we go. They're all accelerating now. Let's see how they go into the first corner. No one's getting too close at the moment. It looks like Schumann had a really good start in fifth place here. Machushka sent it round the corner. Let's see if he can pull it into first. It looks like he's managed to get that move done already, although Deepers is still there on the inside, so he may be able to bring it back. Fisher as well looks like he's about to try and push his way through into second place, but doesn't quite make it. So Noble remains in fourth, Fisher's in third. Machushka has managed to find his way into first place, and Deepers has now dropped to second on the first corner.
It was an excellent drive by Wolf. Matushka did exactly what he had to do, use the banking, use the curvature of turns 1 and 2, took the lead there, got the run up through the S's, and they're all single file. Fisher and Noble trying to do the best they can to stay in touch. Meanwhile, Phil Roberts going to work here, trying to get by Yo. Yo, he has done, and looking very close indeed, racing between the Ginetta and the little Alpine as they continue to race each other. That's, yes, indeed, that pass has not been made because I think Phil Roberts started there. But the point is that they're all very close, side by side in front. That's the 304. I think Harry Conway was in our chat earlier saying that Billy Octane was probably going to crash into someone on lap 1. At best I could tell by the naked eye, that hasn't happened for Billy Octane in the 304 as they all thundered a spoon, and everything that looked just about as clean as you could get. But then again, it's dark.
I was going to say, there's no one hanging back in the car that's spun.
I had to
there's
say
a little
something.
bit of a tap there, actually, between Bautier and I believe that's Stevenson. So they've now pushed Bautier back behind them. But as for how things start out usually in these GT4 races, that was very, very clean. We don't have any major instances. We have a couple of light taps here and there. But no, speaking too soon, that is Bautier meeting the wall. He's off the track again. One of the cars behind, I believe that is Watson, maybe someone else, but they've gone off as well. There's number 7. So that's Pope. Pope has found themselves in the wall there. So not an ideal situation there. And you called it, Jesse. You saw them getting close, and just before it happened, you said that won't end well.
I've been in enough races here at Suzuka to know when it's going to end in tears. And they were going. They were decided through 130R that they were going to go too wide, and they didn't make it to that point. It just gets turned. I think it happens. You have a bumper mismatch, and you're offset on somebody. It's so easy to turn the car in front of you at those speeds, and I think that's exactly what you saw there. And my heart goes out to Denise Pope and the 79 Ginetta team. They've had such good races the last couple of times out. They definitely didn't deserve that a bystander.
They definitely wouldn't have wanted that to happen as well. I mean, like you said, they've done so well recently, and they've definitely been one of the cars that has really stood out to us in the Ginetta there. But unfortunately, that will be the end. Well, not the end of their race, but that will be a rough start, let's say. So they've got a bit of catching up to do there, but already they're kind of close to the pack. They are gaining. So we're going to watch here what's happening. The Alpine has actually set the fastest lap. That's Tom Bryant in the number 24 Alpine. One of the ones that was actually complaining about how the car felt on the track. So clearly the Alpines now starting to get a bit comfortable after qualifying.
I don't put too much stock on lap 1 fastest lap, but that is interesting. It always seems to happen, by the way, in between position 10 and 15 on the first lap. I'm never sure how that happens. I'm sure somebody can explain the logic on why that is usually the case. Lap 1 fastest lap comes from the middle of the pack usually, and it has again on this particular occasion. Tom Bryant, of course, was complaining about the car. He was complaining about a lot of things, and well, still, feather in the cap at least, was the quickest on lap 1 in 14th place position. Meanwhile, the battle for second place, or the battle for first place, I should say, very close indeed. Wolf Matuszka took the lead off of turn 2, but Diepers has not let him get away. It looks like, of course, on the straightaways, the AMG gets a little bit of space, but every time they get to corner, I feel like the 99 Let's Motorsports Porsche catches right back up. This is the battle for third place. Garrett Fisher leading Mike Noble. Mike Noble, I think, is a value pick for me to come through the field tonight, and certainly threatening Garrett Fisher with it right now.
He's definitely threatening Fisher at the moment. You can see him on that straight that he ducked right into the inside. He was definitely looking for a move going through the first corner, and even through that set of S's there, you can see he's getting ever so close to the rear of the Aston Martin, but not being able to find a way through right yet now is actually a bit of a surprise to me. I'd have thought Noble would have been one of the people to benefit off the first corner, the same as Wolf Matuszka did, but so far not managing to find any headway on Fisher right now. So he's going to be looking to get through Fisher as quickly as possible, because the gap from Fisher to Diepers and Matuszka ahead, that's already building, Jesse Lee.
Yeah, it sure is. It's 2.5 seconds. I don't think Mike Noble needs to panic here or rush, and I don't think he will do. A veteran and a great esports alien, Mike Noble. I think he'll be very patient with Garrett Fisher here and plot the moment. Hope that Fisher makes a tiny little mistake. Oh, and speaking of mistake, the 86 going up the inside. Ben trying to get by Stevenson. Stevenson, there's going to be contact there, and that's going to lose. Beaten a position, I'm pretty sure. This is Les Stevenson. Watch how quickly the car comes up to them. Excuse me, this is live pictures. I thought that was a replay. It's dark. By the way, the lighting in ACC has changed dramatically. It is dramatically darker than it used to be. As a little contact there. Fisher and Mike Noble. Noble on the outside of 130R says, I am not going to let you force me wide. A little bit of contact, no harm, no foul though.
Oh, I thought Noble was going to really go for a move there, but it looked like after the first little bit of contact with Fisher, he decided it was probably not the best idea, which I think might have been a little smart, really. But here we have Nyring in the Alpine. They are coming up on Daly here, and it looks like they've got a pretty good run-up, although in the Alpine they're not going to have a lot of speed on the main straight. We'll see if they can do anything though going into the corner. Of course, Daly's getting a bit of a pull from Borodai ahead of him as well, so this isn't going to be easy on the 747. It looks like they're not quite going to be able to make it through yet, but the Alpine, I think, definitely starting to find a little bit of pace here. I know that Nyring in the 747 was one of the more confident of the Alpine drivers. They said that although they were struggling a little bit and it did feel different, it wasn't the end of the world for them. They did feel like they could do something, so they're definitely showing it here. They're in 9th place, which isn't where I'd have put the 747. Honestly, I'd have expected to see them a lot higher up. We've seen them mostly in the top 5 so far, but let's see what they can do today. They've got an hour and 12 minutes left to climb through this pack, so it's like you said, there's absolutely no rush to be overtaking cars with a lot of risky moves just yet.
I gotta tell you, it's quite crazy. Every race leading up to the 1.8 patch, we had 2 Alpines inside the top 5 and as many as 5 in the top 10. And now, post-patch, I think last week we had 1 inside the top 10. Today, it is pretty much the same story. It is insane how different the cars behave after the 1.8 patch. Everyone has had to go back to school. I think potentially the Alpine teams are most affected by that, but I'm sure there's
Ooh.
other people that would probably disagree. Yan Yo in the 303 trying to make a pass here on Phil Roberts. Phil Roberts trying to be as defensive as possible, but very wide maneuver there nonetheless. Klaus here continuing his attack on Jordan Daly, and that's about as close as you can follow another car through 130R and get away with it. Not letting them get away, that tells me that the Alpine, not too bad in the slipstreams, able to keep up with the Aston at least.
The Alpine does look like it's doing quite well on the straights, which isn't something you usually say about the Alpine, but maybe that's one of the things that has changed in the most recent patch. It's just got a little bit better on the straights and not quite so confident in the corners, but we're going to see them coming up again to turn one. We'll see if the 747 does go for the move, and again I think he's just leaves it a little bit too far back by the time they make it to the corner, that there's nothing he can really do at that point. I mean, he's already pulled quite back, but someone who can do something here is Stevenson in the BMW. On the straight, that BMW has no match, and he's managed to find his way through Brighton there. So
Oh, he's going to lose it!
Oh! Actually managing to go a little bit too wide on the first corner there, and Brian's going to start biting back a little bit at Stevenson, but again, Stevenson, they're going to be able to pull just ahead of Tom before the next corner and beat Tom behind in the 86 BMW. They look like they're ready to come through as well, but don't have the room to do it. So Brian right now stuck in between a bit of a BMW sandwich, really, isn't he?
Look at the size difference. That's just not fair. That Alpine, you could fit two of those in the boot of one of those BMWs. That is a very small car. And of course, it reminds you of you driving your normal passenger car on the highway. Oh, contact back here. Klaus maybe having contact with Daly there as they all end up back in the positions they originally were. Meanwhile, by the way, we talk about fastest lap. The 99 is a quick start. Oh no, Mike Noble has touched Garrett Fisher, but they're going to let off in the spoon. I felt like that was a misjudged moment by Mike Noble there a little bit as he let off. Certainly, if Noble felt that he was in the right, he would have kept going, but he didn't. So maybe just tagged him a little bit.
I can't believe Fisher caught that. I mean, like he got knocked off track. Well, not off track, but he got knocked off his line, and then he just caught it and was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to keep going now. So luckily for him, Noble did back off and gave him the room to catch it. But well done to Fisher there for not completely losing it on the corner. But we're going to come up to the straight now. Noble might have a little bit of an advantage here on Fisher. Actually, it looks like he's got the slipstream. He's really close. He's already right on the back of the Aston Martin. He's going to come down the outside here, going towards the first corner. He knows where he wants to be on the track right now to make this overtake happen. So we'll see them come through the first corner here, and Noble is already ahead by the time they made it to the corner. Fisher doesn't have much of a chance to bite back here, and the McLaren is going to manage to plant themselves right in the middle of the track. So that is the overtake that Noble has been looking for since the beginning of the race, and he has managed to do it now. And I think now we'll basically just see maybe both of them. I think Fisher will be able to stay with Noble, but this is going to be a catch-up game to Deepers ahead.
5 seconds the gap to Deepers in front of the 99, and we've been told that Tom Bryan in the 24 has had an incident. Was it alone? No, it wasn't. Oh no! Huge crash! Turned into the inside wall on the run up to Spoon. Massive crash for the 24, and that's just about the worst kind of crash you can have at this racetrack. Just got turned there.
Very lucky that he was very close to the pit entrance, so he could just pull into it there, but that looked like a very painful crash. You're certainly happy that that's a sim race crash and not a real one, because the car came round his outside, they slightly tapped, and that was it. He was in the wall within the second, so certainly not what Brian would have wanted from the race, and I'm sure he's going to be kicking himself slightly that he's having to pit this early. Of course, this isn't in the pit window either. There's not a specific pit window that you have to go in, but there is a driver stint limit, which I believe is 45 minutes. So Brian will not be switching drivers yet, and if he does, he will have to get back in the car later. There's actually someone there got tapped a little bit. Was that Daly that just got tapped a little bit in that corner? I'm not quite sure what happened there. I think that was Daly.
It certainly might have been. Klaus in ninth place. and Daly is behind him. So yeah, that was Jordan Daly in the 373. A little bit of contact at the top of the circuit, perhaps, has got Klaus by him. And Octane has just gotten by Daly. That's Billy Octane's BMW and Daly's Aston. And creeping into this shot, if I'm not rather mistaken, that's Phil Roberts' Alpine as well.
I believe that is Roberts in the Alpine, just managing to sneak their way into the bottom of the broadcast there. It looks like Daly wants to come back through Octane as quickly as possible. He's been flashing away ever since Octane found their way through here, so certainly not happy with losing that many positions. Daly isn't, but I mean, you wouldn't be. If you lose a position, you're certainly not going to be too happy. But here we're going to see the Alpine of Nyring. He's pressuring Watts a little bit in that Porsche. He's really close already and looks like he's ready to come through at any point in time. But again, Watts doing an amazing job of defending. They've planted themselves in the middle of the corners, and once they do that, there's nothing that the car behind can do. Although the Alpine is looking for the inside here, and it looks like they're almost neck and neck. They need to be careful. We've seen a lot of accidents happen now already, but these two merging
you don't want to be side by side here, boys.
And it looks like there's going to be a bit of contact there. Luckily not horrendous, but Watts will hit Nyring a little bit. Of course, there is no room on that corner, so although it was a great bit of fighting up until that point, they were respecting each other's space, there comes a point in time when the track runs out of room and someone has to back out.
You just can't be side by side in the Degners. You just can't do it, and you have to get single file, and every time you go through there side by side, you run the risk of it being a big accident. That wasn't a big accident. Thankfully, both drivers were very heads up, and it didn't end that way. I want to go back to the front of the field. I've been trying to talk about this 99 Porsche for the last 5 minutes. Well, things keep happening, but this is exactly what I'm talking about. This gap that was more than a second, just about 2.5 laps ago, was down about a 10th on the back straightaway here. And Deepers, by the way, has the fastest lap of the race and has improved upon having the fastest lap in the race. Wolf Matuszka might be in trouble here.
He might be in trouble. Deepers is doing a phenomenal job so far, and you can see the speed that Porsche is carrying down the straight currently compared to the Mercedes, but Matuszka is going to be able to go into the first corner ahead. That being said, the 99 is closing very, very fast from the number 25 Mercedes, and Deepers is absolutely making this track look easy right now, and I agree. I saw he dropped, I think, at the furthest he was back, it was 2.5 seconds between first and second at one point, and within 4 or 5 laps, Deepers has just closed that gap to almost nothing. So you do have to hand it to the 99 Porsche here. Of course, they do have the fastest lap, and, well, they're looking for the race win by the looks of it.
Having a Porsche in the corners, especially at a track like Suzuka, is just unfair. It's like using a cheat code some of the time. If you can tame the Porsche, it will reward you in the corners. And I think Felix has done just that for Let's Motorsports as they are attempting to take the lead here. We know Wolf Matuszka not going to make mistakes, will get defensive if necessary, but will not make unnecessary moves. And as we ride on the rear wing of Matuszka's peak performance 25, looking back at Felix, these are the top two. And of course, these two, if they get to racing each other, Mike Noble, who's put himself into 3rd place in this race, they could continue to gain. Like I said earlier, they're 5 seconds down, but that gap could be erased in a hurry if these two have to race each other. Nothing too defensive by Matuszka yet, because I just feel at the end of every straightaway, the AMG's muscle down the straight just gets Matuszka enough in front that Felix can't take advantage down into a braking zone, at least in the sector 3 anyway. We'll see if this trend continues. Meanwhile, Mike Noble is catching just a little bit of lap.
He's edging closer and closer every lap, and this, like you say, he's just basically going to be capitalizing off these two fighting ahead. Every corner that Matuszka has to take differently, every corner that Deepers has to try and overtake Matuszka on, they're going to be slowing each other down in the process because they're coming off of their optimal racing line. So that will all play into Noble's hands. He's on the catch-up game right now. He's given himself already a 3-second gap to Fisher behind, so he's going to be a little bit safe from the threat of losing that podium position. Noble basically now just has to keep doing laps he's comfortable with until he has to pit. Daly is looking to get back at Octane right now. We said earlier that he was particularly unhappy to be dropping back as far as he did, and now it looks like it might be his chance to strike back, although again he's just not going to be up behind Octane going into the first corner. The problem that he's facing now is the age-old story of Aston Martin versus BMW, which just, once that BMW hits the straight, you lose any opportunity you had to overtake because it will just outpace you in less than a second.
Ethan Jenkins in chat joining us saying, me and Tom, meaning Tom Bryant, can't get any luck this season, crashing and also having internet and game issues. I think we feel for you, certainly in that case. Meanwhile, for 8th place, the battle does continue, and this is not a battle for position in class, but it's a position that Klaus has to get to Alexander Bordai in front. And a very close racing there, discretion being the better part of valor and potentially preventing an incident there.
How did they not touch there? The Alpine looked like it was inside the Porsche at one point, but the Porsche didn't get shaken around a bit, so even if they did touch, it certainly wasn't enough to affect the driving of the number 7. But Watts has been defending Nyring now for a good couple of laps. I say it's been about 3 or 4, and it looks like he's not really having to sweat about it. He's building a slight train behind him, which usually happens if you've got 2 cars fighting, then the rest of the cars behind will start to really line up as they are being slowed down by the cars ahead. But Watts seems to be handling himself, and I mean, if you look at their different categories, he's a silver, Nyring is a pro, and although that doesn't necessarily mean that there's no reason the pro is specifically supposed to be faster, and of course the silvers have to move out the way of the pro or anything, but let's imagine you're in the seat. If there's a pro behind you, you're going to be a little bit nervous, but it looks like Watts is dealing with it very, very well and is not letting it phase him at all that there is a whole train of pros behind him.
Yeah, you got to stand your ground because you never know if you let all those cars go, it's dangerous to put that space between you and somebody else. And also, you have every right to the track space that you have. And if they're behind you, they're probably behind you for a reason, and they have to do the work to get by you. Now, there are a lot of drivers that will just let a different class of car go, but for me, especially if I'm this man, if I'm Watts, and Schumann's just up the road 5 seconds, 5-6 seconds, I'm probably not going to try or want to lose more time. So if they get around me, they get around me, but I'm not going to lose more time laying over for you, nor do they have to. Speaking of laying over, Wolf Matuszka is doing an excellent job, staying just in front of Felix. It's very close between them, has been for the last several laps. I feel like these two just feeling each other out for the time being. I don't think Felix is going to make a hasty maneuver. I don't think Matuszka is going to make a mistake, and I think they're just going to be nose to tail for a while. Of course, I'm a big fan, Tim, of get to the halfway point, get to the pit stop, and then make your strategy from there of what you need to do. Don't throw it away here.
Absolutely do not throw away here. They have 58 minutes left in this race, which is more than enough time for Deepers to find a way through Matuszka without it being risky. So I agree with you. I think it's just going to really be a case of them hot lapping around at the front of each other. The 99 Porsche just has to follow the 25 close enough so that when it comes to the pit stop time, they're basically pitting on top of each other. And even then, if Matuszka has picked up the slightest bit of damage, that could be the difference in who comes out on pole. But I imagine what will happen is Matuszka will come out first, Deepers will come out just behind him, or their respective teammates at least will. And then they'll be fighting from there as Yo actually, again, looking for the outside of Roberts. Yo been doing a very good job in that just so far. They've been very close to Roberts for most of the race and have been looking for it. As again, we've got Nyring on Watts here, as Nyring actually manages to look for the inside going into the straight. Isn't going to have enough speed to get ahead before the straight, but will be in the slipstream of the Porsche now. He will have one more chance at the beginning of the lap, the first corner. He'll have the chance to overtake before Watts will be able to plant himself. And it looks like he's not quite going to be close enough, but it looks like Watts has actually gone quite wide around the outside, which is going to give Alpine a chance to go down the inside, and it looks like he's put himself there as Watts gives him a slight tap. He's going to flash, whether that's a sorry or a bit of anger there coming out from the Porsche, I do not know, but Nyring has managed to make that move on the inside. There was a bit of a tap there. I imagine Watts didn't realise how much the Alpine had gained and like whether they got
Oh,
through.
he's
That is
super
definitely
mad.
anger. From all that flashing, there can only be anger. But Watts is certainly not happy with how that played out. But honestly, I don't really know if the Alpine's at fault. I'd say that's just a racing incident. I mean, Watts went wide. The Alpine with no ring, he put himself there legit. I think Watts turned in a little too much there.
Yeah, it's dark. It's hard for me to tell, but Watts certainly thinks that Klaus didn't give him any space or kind of forced the move there. But either way, flashing of the lights furiously through the S's that time. But either way, Watts loses the place, but doesn't lose points in class. Two different classes. Elliot Watts here. Oh, it's a replay. Oh, I don't know, Tim Peck. What is your take on that?
I think realistically, I get it from Watts' point of view. Obviously, he turned in and no one was just there. But I think realistically, there was more than enough room for both of them on the track. And I think it's just a racing incident. I don't think either one particularly did something wrong that the other should be angry about. I think Watts just turned in a little bit too much. Knowing, of course, wasn't as far across as he could have been, and there's just a little tap between them. But I certainly don't think either driver has done anything particularly wrong that they need to be penalised for there, really.
No live stewarding on Thursdays. All stewarding is taken care of post race, as is standard for Thursdays. So be curious what happens with that. I'm of the same opinion, Tim, to be honest. I don't think anything will happen. Remember how we said that the Chevrolet was sort of underperforming this season? Well, not at Suzuka. It's Will Stevenson in the 871 Chevrolet in 5th place. A very strong showing so far. And speaking of very strong showing, these two are going to have nightmares of one another. Nick Matushka is going to dream about seeing a Porsche in a rearview mirror, and I guess Felix is going to be dreaming of Pepto-Bismol, perhaps.
That's certainly one way to describe the pink car ahead of him currently, but I think Machushka's done a very good job of defending so far. Saying that though, not really had to do too much. So like we said, Deepers is just following Machushka, either waiting for a mistake to happen which he can capitalize off, or simply just really waiting until the pits happen. Noble is gaining now though. That's the second he is taken out of them, so they don't have to be too worried. Again, I think if Noble catches up, he's just going to join the train, to be honest. We're going to watch 3 cars driving around with each other. So not a lot happens in this first half of the race, I should say, in terms of people doing risky moves. But I think an interesting battle is definitely brewing here. These two are definitely sizing each other up for their teammates, I think. It's once we have the pit stops and their teammates get in the car, I reckon the 25 Mercedes and the 99 Porsche, they're going to be scrapping it out until the finish line.
Ginny Worminski in the 727 has a little company as well. Bautier in that Chevrolet has caught the leading car in AM. That fight is going to be commencing somewhat shortly, as Bautier's car has come alive here halfway through their stint and ran down the leading AM car. Meanwhile, the battle for 3rd place in silver, Roberts and Yo continuing on. I briefly touched on this earlier. If we get some of the corners wrong, or we're not quite sure where we're at on the track, do bear with us. The new cameras, as I'm sure you can see at home, very dark. The shading has been retooled in the 1.8 update. This is the first time on a Thursday we've seen a night race since then, and it's very difficult in some of the darker points of the track to know exactly where you're at. Yan Yo trying to go down the outside and holding strong. Phil Roberts on the inside, just gonna get it. Yo, all sorts of sideways on the curb, but saves it. An excellent job on all accounts, and the battle will resume. But certainly, after that hard of an attack, Tim Peck, the frustration's mounting a little bit in that Ginetta.
Yeah, you can tell that Yo is eager to get through as quickly as possible, but I mean, that first corner just seems to go on forever when you're watching it. It seemed like Yo was on the outside for about a century there, really, as he tried to go around the outside of Roberts in the Alpine, but unfortunately for him, not being able to make it and having to duck back in behind after getting a little bit skiddy on the end of the corner. And that's really what we were talking about. A lot of the complaints so far about the way the new cars drive is that it's really hard to get the same level of grip that you used to, and that the back was really throwing itself out. But certainly not struggling that here was Beaton, as I believe he just managed to push his way through here of Stevenson ahead. I believe Beaton actually just got overtaken by what's behind there instead, so maybe struggling there a little is Beaton himself, but we'll see how this pans out. It looks like he might be able to strike back on the inside of the corner, although it's a bit tight, so he's not going to get the good exit that he wants there. And there goes Stevenson. He's going to drive away in the number 4 BMW ahead of him now. And Pope, who had an accident earlier, I seem to remember.
Remember her?
Yeah, they went into the wall and they certainly weren't happy about it, but she's like, hi, I'm back and I'll have this position, thank you, making it look absolutely easy on the car ahead of them. They have just pushed their way through. And again, Ginetta's, much like the Alpines, definitely been a very fun car to watch this season.
Ooh! Oh, she's going to go off track there. Oh, and nearly rejoined there. Mir nearly taking him out. Of course, Mir would not have ever thought that Denise Pope would come across the track like that. But no, she had contact with the barrier. But all that tells me is that the car isn't damaged too much. She's able to not only control it, not have to pit, but also able to gain positions. But just got it a bit wrong there at the top of the circuit, getting it all back under them. And of course, we have been switching back and forth. We keep anticipating Jordan Daly overtaking Billy Octane here for 10th place, but it just hasn't quite happened yet. Jordan Daly, who is actually quite happy and content with their car for today. Fortunately, it has lost several positions, won't be very happy about that, but whatever pace that 373 didn't have in the first 15 minutes, it certainly found it now. It certainly found its legs.
Daly has been sticking to the back of Octane. Actually, oh, it looked like he's about to meet the back of Octane for a second there, but again, they're onto one of the straights, and the BMW is just going to slightly pull away, but Daly will have another chance. There's a couple of corners coming up where he can really capitalise, especially in Aston Martin, and we're going to see him follow through here, but not really managed to make a move of any sort, so I imagine Daly is going to have to wait for a later corner to get through Octane. But I'm just looking towards the front again, and we're going to see the time come through now. Noble in the last lap has just knocked off a second. Like, that happened in about 2 sectors. Noble has found his pace and is now looking to catch up with the two ahead. Also finding their pace is Yo, still looking to come through Roberts here, and you can see someone who's been quite eager on that Alpine ahead. They've definitely been looking for every inside opportunity that they can, is once again ready to strike as we come onto the straight. And actually, it looks like they've got the speed to take them right here, right now.
Well, it's going to be very close. Yo trying to go around the outside. Will they have enough room? No, they will not. And it will still be Phil Roberts with the position. I'm pretty sure. Yes, indeed, as they come into the light, Phil Roberts maintains that position, but only just, as that's the second time on the same lap that those two got side by side. Grim has told me in chat that Phil Roberts is sweating and panting, trying to defend Yan Yo here in this battle. I would be too. It's a lot of hard work. Keep in mind, they don't have the grip they used to in the GT4s. Oh, speaking of loss of grip, almost on cue.
I thought he'd lost it completely there, but I think he managed to catch it right towards the end. We will see whether Yo managed to find their way through, but for now, here is Daly on Octane, who looks like he's ready to get through, and again, just not being able to find it as we come through the S, not really being able to get through, but Daly has been eager to get through Octane. He's really looking for it. You can see the desperation now, but coming back to what was happening between Yo and Roberts here, Yo is currently side by side.
Oh, they're coming into Degner
with the Alpine. We've seen this already once this race, and these two are going to manage to be able to do it quite cleanly, as Yo looks like to get the bear into the stick, although the Alpine is still on the inside there. And both are still neck and neck as they come up to the next corner. Yo sticking themselves in a little bit on the inside. They're going to have a bit of an advantage going to this corner. They're slightly ahead as well as Yo manages to find their way through. God, that seemed to go on for a while. Both neck and neck and managing to make it work.
I said earlier in the broadcast that you don't want to go too wide through the Degners. Well, you saw it right there. I thought that Roberts was going to be able to pull back to the inside. In fact, actually late broke into the second Degner just to get alongside to force Yo wide. It was an excellent battle, and it was one that was well won by Yan Yo. Phil Roberts, though, will be frustrated that he finally got through, but I don't think Phil Roberts has anything to be ashamed about. That was an excellent battle for the past 15, 20 minutes and been very entertaining. And you never know, you could get that back on the pit stop as well.
Yeah, that certainly isn't a battle that I think will be ending too quickly. Roberts definitely will be able to keep up with Yo here. We've seen they've both got similar pace, so maybe the Alpine will be able to find their way back through. But again, hoping to repeat that sort of move will be Daly on Octane right now. They're getting ever so close to the rear of that BMW, but again, the BMW is just that slight edge on the straight, which means the Aston Martin has to find it a little bit harder. They're going into this first corner. The BMW looks to be a little wide, and the Aston Martin actually might be alongside the BMW right now. It looks like they found their way through around the outside of the second corner here, and again, they're going to switch their side of the track. They definitely want every inside that they possibly can. They're just really pushing the BMW around the track right now, but Daly seems to have made the move stick on Octane there, so he's going to be happy that he's finally found his way back through. It looked like he'd been trying to do that for the past 15 minutes. So Daly now has a bit of a breath of fresh air, really, and can really do the pace they want to as Octane flashes, I imagine, just to say hello.
Well, I know these two are in the same chat. They could probably talk to each other if they wanted to. They might as well be doing it. I think that was actually a friendly flash from Billy Octane after a well-done battle between the two of them. A lot of respect between those two guys, and that was certainly a friendly flash. It's hard to explain it to people that aren't necessarily race fans, but as racing drivers and race fans, I think we can kind of guess what the flash means. Oh, and he's gonna be off the track. Deepers, does he save it? He's off into the sort of AstroTurf, gets back onto the racetrack. That's going to be a lot of lost time. And there he is, the other pink car in the top three. That's Mike Noble in the FFS Racing McLaren, right there on the back of Felix Deepers. This is for second place now. And Noble, who was catching this front group anyway, has had that expedited by the mistake. What happened there? Did Wolf Matushka catch Felix off guard there coming into the triangle, I wonder?
Deepers has been staring at pink so far for the entire race, and again now he's
surrounded by pink.
He is. He's in a pink sandwich. He's got pink in front. He's got pink behind. He's probably thinking, what is happening with all of this pink right now? But he is going to have to fight just to keep second place here. Noble has been gaining pretty quickly, actually, over the last couple of laps. There was a sort of grace period where Noble was just casually driving around, but now he has gained, and he's only a second behind Deepers, so Deepers will have to turn their attention to the back of their car, as well as looking ahead to Wolf Machushka. So a good situation turn out there for the number 25. He's going to have a little bit of a chance to breathe, really. He's having to defend for the last 20 minutes, maybe even, dare I say, the whole race. Number 25 is defending for, but now he's got a bit of a breather as the 99 will turn his attention to the 1-2-3 McLaren behind him.
So many times in these races, it becomes who blinks first, who makes a mistake. We talk about every week, Wolf Matushka isn't the kind to make mistakes. I think this entire season, we've only seen one real mistake out of Wolf, and it's just not something that really happens. And of course, Felix now making a bit of a mistake, running off the track, potentially doing that just to try and miss Wolf Matushka and not cause an incident, but got themselves in a bit of trouble. Now, Wolf Matushka taking a well-deserved rest. Mike Noble now licking his chops at a chance for second. And meanwhile, Phil Roberts with a penalty, Tim.
Yes, that penalty as well. As we've said, there is no live stewarding on the GT4 Thursday event, so that will be given for cutting a corner one too many times. You get 3 warnings, and then on your 4th corner cut, you'll receive a nice drive-through for yourself, which is what Roberts has found himself here. So he will, in the next 3 laps, have to serve that. Otherwise, he'll be getting a very hefty penalty there. So unfortunately for the Alpine, his fight with Yo, which is still going, by the way, there was only 4 attempts in it in the first sector there, has now come to an end. So he'll be dropping back through the field, and we'll see where that places him. He shouldn't be completely out of the race, but I imagine he's going to be a little bit further back than where he wants to be. He certainly will not be fighting for that silver podium anymore, which he's been doing for the majority of the race so far.
Extra trip down pit lane, never good. Speaking of trips down pit lane, several drivers' cars have been down the pit lane. Wisniewski now in the 727. That was your leading AM car. They're now running last in AM, but that's only because they're the first AM car to have pitted. Pixley now on board the 79 Ginetta, and several other cars coming in. Phil Roberts will have to make an additional stop. Billy Octane in, Stevenson in. All those cars inside the top 15. And Phil Roberts was not particularly excited about today's race, citing issues with the car, and certainly will be even less enthused now, considering how the race has gone in the first half. Well, here is the race for what could be the win up front. Wolf Matuszka leads by 1.5 seconds over Felix Diepers. Mike Noble just a 1.5 seconds back off of him. Those are your fastest 3 drivers, and a lot to be sorted out between the 3 of them. Meanwhile, Tom Watts, the Country Bunch team, trying to get into 11th place by Stevenson here. Again, not a battle in class. And Schumann, who has led the entire way throughout silver, continues to lead over Watts. And Yo, who just recently took over the 3rd spot in silver. Bautier now takes over the lead in AM by virtue of the 727 taking a pit stop. I don't mind that. If you're a leader in a class or you're not really battling anybody, why not come in right at the middle point of the race and get your second driver in there? I don't hate that if you are at the 727.
I don't hate it either, and as we said, there is no specific pit window that you have to pit in, but with a 45-minute max drive stint time on each driver, you do need to pit either between the 45-minute mark or the 35-minute mark. So they've got about 4.5 more minutes left of time to pit. So we'll see a lot of people come to the pits. Noble actually has pitted, so they've decided that they're not going to try and take the 99 Porsche on the track. They're going to just come into the pits now and let Killian, I believe, have his go at the Porsche ahead. So we'll see how that one turns out after everyone's pitted in a minute. But Deepers there looked like he was having a little bit of an internet problem, but we will see how that one turns out. He's managed to find himself right at the back of that pink Mercedes again. So although he had his little slip up earlier, which showed him full 2 seconds behind, he's managed to catch back up very quickly. Deepest, of course, has looked very confident on the track so far. Has the fastest lap of the race and is continuing to set very fast laps compared to those around him. So we'll see what happens with these two. I imagine the pit for these two will come right at the end, basically on the 35-minute mark, as they will want to spend as much time in the car as possible to see if they can find their way through the Mercedes ahead. But honestly, I think at this point, pitting has just become do it when you're in a position where it's safe to do so, because the undercut, we've not seen it work properly, we've not seen an overcut work properly. It just becomes a case of whenever there's a clear chance to pit.
I think really the only strategy up front was Mike Noble coming in. Now, you know, Killian was the one that qualified that car, struggled for pace a little bit. I wonder if maybe that was just qualifying pace. Maybe Killian has the pace in the race. Felix Diepers will come off the track to the attention of his crew. He'll get out of the Lutz Motorsports number 99 in relief of his teammate. Wolf Matuszka continues on for another lap. I reckon he can do about one more lap safely and come in, as nearly everybody has pitted to this point, as Anton Vasiliev, who has gotten into the 112, slots into the 11th place position currently, but could be up for a little bit more. Svinček in the 871. Anderson's in the number 7 Porsche in silver. Martin Lawrence in the 304 behind Vasiliev, and Jake the Bosmeister Boswell in the 373, just off the back out of shot here. There he is.
On a second, wasn't that Aston Martin ahead of the BMW when they went into the pits? I thought we watched that
I think it
overtake.
might
So
have been.
the 304 has managed to find their way back through. Here is Vasiliev, goes down the inside, gets a little bit of a tap from
Look at the 304!
on the
Look
outside,
at the
and
304!
the 304 has gone round the inside, capitalizing off the errors and the tap that happened between Vasiliev and I believe that was Boswell. Might have been someone else there that tapped him. That was Anderson that tapped Vasiliev there. So Lawrence in the 304 BMW, he saw his opportunity to strike and he took it. He went straight for the inside and made a very clean overtake there whilst all the chaos was happening. So he will be very, very happy with how his race goes. So just get a little bit of a shunt from behind from Vasiliev, who somehow missed his braking marker there and will have accidentally found himself in the back of their BMW, but luckily not enough to completely spin himself out. But a lot of action happening here on the outlaps after the pit stops.
Martin Lawrence, absolutely baller move right there. Saw Vasiliev and Anderson get really close, maybe make contact, and all of a sudden Martin Lawrence, the ultimate opportunist in that 304 BMW, says, I'll have you both, thank you very much. Gets themselves up into the 7th place position. Vasiliev, I don't think actually made contact with Lawrence, just got really close, almost a complete replay of the Deepers Matushka incident, or lack thereof an incident, as your leader is in pit lane. Schumann is the only one that hasn't made a pit stop with Felix as well. Felix is still in that car in the 99, so the 99 has had issues with the driver change.
I was gonna say Deepers is still in the car there, and they've still got the mandatory driver change as well. So maybe
it's
they
worse
don't
than
have
that. Look at the 123.
The 120. Oh wow! I didn't even see them. They're so far down. They're still in the pits. I wonder what's happened there. I can't even begin to think what's happened with the 123 there. But that is certainly not how we thought that the front three would really end up after the pit stops here. I mean, I personally was expecting a very close fight between all three of them, as Machushka and Deepers were batting out for basically the entire first half of the race, and Noble had managed to catch up as well, but that will come to an end very, very quickly. But we'll see when Machushka comes out in relation to everyone else. Schumann as well is in the pit, so he should be able to avoid his, well, not his penalty, but he should be able to avoid a penalty for not stopping drivers. But it looks like Deepers and Bryant will be two without teammates for the rest, which means they'll receive a 130-second time penalty at the end. But, well, here's what's happened with Deepers and Machushka. Deepers is ahead of Machushka. So, oh no! Oh no, I think that might have been a connection issue there. I thought that was Deepers completely missing the track there, but it turns out that's just a connection issue. But that's the story of how that one turns out. He's ahead of Machushka right now. So in an ideal world, that's a perfect pit stop for him. But in the realistic world, he's not been able to stop drivers, so that's actually going to be a missed opportunity for the 99 Porsche.
Yeah, I think everybody but the Peak Performance team having issues there. Mike Noble in the pit lane. I don't know if they will continue. Actually, Killian Ryan Meenan must be in that car because his pit bar is green. Because, yes, that is Killian Ryan Meenan in the car, but not driving. That was your third place car, who was only a few seconds off, and they have closed the garage door. FFS Racing will take no further part in this race. They will free fall through the championship standings. Meanwhile, drama at both ends of the field, as Felix Deepers did come down pit lane, didn't get the driver change in, leads this race, but will not be credited with a win.
They will not be credited with a win. They will receive a 130-second time penalty at the end of this race for not completing the mandatory driver swap. And I'm wondering if this was something they were prepared for, if they knew at the beginning that they weren't going to have a teammate here. So they did the pit stop just to really refresh their tyres, because there's not really another reason to pit. You can actually make the entire race without having to pit. Just about, we've seen it before, but the 99 Porsche deciding to just put that one pit stop in the middle, which might have just been a safe call. They've managed to find themselves ahead of Vitt here, but again, like we said, it doesn't matter. They're going to receive that penalty, so Vitt will be credited with the win. All Vitt has to worry about now is Foch behind, and I believe that is a rather large gap. It's showing us one lap now. That's because they've not crossed the same line. It's 15 seconds to the 878 Aston Martin behind. So really, Vit just has a very easy task right now of just really trying to stay on track. Someone who's not got an easy task is Jake Boswell here, who's trying to get through Vasiliev. These two, very battery, I've noticed, on the last few corners.
This is just a man in his natural habitat, folks. If you don't know who Jedi Jake Boswell is, the Boz, as he's sometimes referred to, this is his natural habitat inside the top 10, trying to squeeze every ounce of performance out of his car, the Triple R Academy Tryhards team. In this particular case, trying to do everything to get around him, was even flashing Vasiliev to see if that had any effect on the 112 driver. I don't think Vasiliev will care too much about that, as he's not paying Boswell any mind. But if I was David Attenborough, I'd be doing a nature documentary right now. Jake Boswell in his natural habitat, stalking his prey. The adult Jake Boswell can pass as many as 100 cars in a single race if there are that many cars in the race. Did you know that about the Jake Boswell team?
I knew that Jake Boswell was a very, very good racer. I didn't know the exact statistic of 100 car race, but it looks like he's not going to be adding to that statistic, as he just got a little slide there just behind Vasiliev. But hey, there is 30 minutes left, so there is absolutely time to do this. And actually, I heard Christian mention earlier that the flashing in this game is almost like waving at someone. But the problem is you can't tell if it's an angry wave or a happy wave. I imagine that was just Boswell testing a little wave to say, "Hello, I'm here," and see if that would affect Vasiliev's driving in any way. But Vasiliev has managed to keep a calm head about him and not let the flashing get to him too much. So he's going to continue to defend Boswell here. Certainly not an easy task, as you have mentioned.
Well, if you're just joining us, just a little bit of a recap. I know some of you will be interested in the FFS racing car, the 123. They have become the first retirement of the day, and we're not really sure what happened. Mike Noble, who was 2 seconds out of the lead of the race, running in third, brought the car to a scheduled pit stop. Killian Ryan Meenan got in that car, and it just never left pit road. The pit stop was valid, everything was good, and they just didn't leave pit lane, and they retired the car. So we're not entirely sure what happened, but something clearly happened to the FFS racing team, and they are no longer in this race. This man right here, Christoph Verstappen in the 747 Alpine, trying to put one inside the top 5 for the first time today. Catalan in the 30 in front of him will be the next sort of driver, next sort of victim, as Tom Bryant, who may or may not be racing alone today, has had a frustrating day, and it just got even more frustrating with an additional trip to the dirt.
Certainly not agreeing with his car today, as Tom Bryant already mentioned before the race that he wasn't 100% keen with how it feels, and certainly looks like he's struggling a little bit out there. Of course, he's racing alone today with no teammate as well, so he's basically just at this point racing for the fun of it. So Tom Bryant will be looking to just try and get a little bit of action in at some point during the race. But right now, someone who has got action is Boswell again on Vasiliev. Those two have a bit of a clash with each other going into the hairpin there, but neither driver is going to spin out. So Boswell not making their way through Vasiliev just yet. Will be giving a nice angry wave to Vasiliev there to say, "Come on, man, what are you doing?" But Boswell not quite finding his way through Vasiliev just yet. Will be looking to do that soon, both in Aston Martin as well. So this is going to come down to who managed to handle each corner better, really, because other than that, there's nothing they can really give an excuse for in the cars.
Let me explain to you what's going on in this battle right here. Vasiliev is rightfully defending his place. Jake Boswell thinks that Vasiliev is holding him up unnecessarily. Vasiliev feels like Jake Boswell is damaging his car unnecessarily and would prefer him to stop hitting him. It's all of these things. That was very much an angry flash to the lights, for those of you wondering, from Boswell to Vasiliev, and that is how this is played out here. There are no friends in this battle, and I don't think they're going to be friends after this race, Tim.
No, I think that's probably the closed door and the possible friendship that could have happened there between the
No
373
Christmas card exchange this year.
There will be no Christmas cards, there'll be no Christmas presents. Don't think there'll even be a Christmas carol between the two of them. They certainly will not be buddying up at Christmas yet, but Boswell still looking to find their way through here. And we'll just really be continuing to follow Vasiliev until the opportunity arises. You can see the difference in the braking, which is actually getting me a little bit nervous every time they come to a braking point. Boswell gets very, very close to Vasiliev ahead, so hopefully they can give each other enough respectable space to keep the rest of this race clean. But Boswell, I imagine, will be looking to get through as quickly as possible. Of course, there is less than 30 minutes in the race right now, and there we go.
That's one way to do it.
Vasiliev, that's the move that Boswell's been waiting for. Vasiliev makes a slight
Vasiliev's
mistake,
mad.
goes wide, and Boswell comes through. But Vasiliev, it's now his turn to see if he can get through Jake Boswell.
I think he may have had an opportunity there for a split moment, but running off the track in the Degners was Vasiliev, and through is Jake the Bosmeister Boswell in 8th place. The 373, I would say the patience paid off, but Jake showed absolutely no patience. He pounced at every opportunity and eventually got the job done one way or another. By the way, Wolf Matushka, who got out of the leading peak performance 25 AMG, confirming what happened to the second place, or excuse me, the third place car, as Verstappen goes completely off the track after getting the pass done for 5th place. Will Catalani do something here? No, gonna fall in line. Position Verstappen.
Verstappen went a little bit wide then. I was slightly concerned for a second, but managed to hold it together and just bring it back onto the track safely without clashing with the number 30 Aston Martin. So we're going to have a little look at what happened between Vasiliev and Boswell here. Again, Vasiliev wants to find his way back through. He wasn't happy that Boswell got through in the way he did, and already is looking to try and make that place back up. Anderson behind as well. He's caught up in the number 7 Porsche. It looks like he's trying to find his way through the 2 Aston Martin pros ahead of him. So we'll see whether Anderson can add something to this fight here. But for now, they're going to maintain their line of 3 in the same order it was. Ooh, actually, Vasiliev there got a little bit twitchy on that corner. Looked like he lost a bit of grip for a second.
Keep in mind, Anderson didn't like the way Vasiliev tried to pass him into spoon, did he? So a little bit of bad blood all down the back half of the top 10. But I was talking earlier about Wolf Matushka shedding some light on what happened to FFS Racing and Killian Ryan Neiman. His controls were not mapped correctly, or they were messed up, is what Wolf Matushka said. I don't know what exactly Wolf means by that. I don't know if they had mapped themselves weird or they just weren't correct. But either way, it has prevented FFS Racing from continuing in this race, and that is the reason. I love the fact that Wolf gets out of the car, the leading car, immediately goes and tries to figure out what happened to another teammate and reports it back to us. Cheers, Wolf.
Wolf Matushka there is being a very good news reporter for us, letting us know exactly what had happened. So I imagine that was exactly what was on his mind in the pit as well. Of course, he had not only Deepers to worry about and what was happening with him, but also what was going to happen with the 123 McLaren, and both actually.
Oh, Vasiliev!
Oh,
that car is evil. That car does not look good. I don't know if they've ran the tires off of that car or just something about that setup. They're pushing a little harder than they were otherwise, or maybe it has something to do with the aero wash of the car in front. I'm not sure. But one way or another, we can all agree, you can physically see it in the dark. That car is not handling particularly well. Very loose indeed.
That car is very sliding. We've seen that 112 Aston Martin sliding around a lot of these corners as we continue the race here. But again, it looks like the Boswell window is closing with all of these slides happening. He's starting to lose the advantage that he had. He was within striking range, but now he's fallen that little bit far back and won't really have an opportunity to dive bomb him the way that Boswell did to Vasiliev a couple of laps earlier. But Anderson as well, not being able to capitalise. He's having to sit behind the 2 Aston Martins right now and doesn't really have an opportunity to come through. The problem is, I imagine, is if he tries to go through one, with how close they were, he doesn't have an opportunity to take both. So he'd go through one and then have nowhere to go. So Anderson kind of in a sticky spot right now, although with this gap opening a bit between 8th and 9th, he will maybe be able to do something here. But again, Vasiliev already closed the door to Jake Boswell and ready to catch back up. So these Aston Martins, I reckon this is going to come down to the line, Jesse Lee.
Yeah, it could. It's either going to come down to the line or it's going to come to tears one way or another. It certainly feels like that. I can only imagine what Wolf Matuszka feels like right now. He came into pit lane. He knew that he only had about a 2-second lead on third place. He gets out of the car. His teammate Phil Vitt gets into the Pink Performance 25, and all of a sudden, they're not racing anybody. Both of their competitors had some sort of drama that has taken them out of having a chance to win this race, and you have Pink Performance standing alone at the top. That is such a strange feeling. I can't recall a single other time that has ever happened.
That is certainly a Christmas present come early for the Pink Performance Mercedes team there. They're going to be very, very happy with how that one's turned out. Coming into the pits with, of course, both your rivals very close to you, and they're no longer there. And obviously we saw how close the championship was between the Mercedes and the McLaren coming into this race. That will no longer be the case with if the race ends the way it does. The 25 Mercedes will be the championship leader by a little bit of a margin going into the final race of the season. Of course, next week we will be at Kyalami. That will be round 6 of this GT4 championship, and that will decide which of these cars in each split takes home the championship. What's happened here, and why is there an Aston Martin rejoining the track out of nowhere?
I don't know. Rudy Philmotter will be asking the same question. This is Neil Pimlott in the 913. What happened to him here? Well, nothing there. That's on the straightaway. That's nowhere near the scene of the crime. So something happened clearly, but going back the right direction is the 913 back in the 14th place position. Well, it has been a rough and tough race for a lot of drivers. The lap 1 sort of incidents were fairly minor, all things considered. I think the car that probably got it just about the worst was the 79 Ginetta, and they've made it back inside the top 20. Pixley in that car right now might be a candidate for spirit of the race today. And nothing changing in, well, pretty much any of the categories. Felix Diepers does lead the race, but hasn't pitted yet, and will certainly be in violation of the pit stop requirements. So that will be a hefty time penalty for Lutz Motorsports. So they will not win this race. It's looking like Phil Vitt and Wolf Matuszka for Pink Performance will win this race. Samir Foch, by the way, in the 878, is the 25's nearest championship rival now. And they will probably go into the final round settling it between themselves, I would say.
I think that is probably how that is likely to go from here. Of course, those are the two that are going to be closest fighting, as Diepers isn't going to have too great of an ending. He's going to have a 130-second time penalty, so I imagine I'll slot him probably around 15th, maybe, looking at where they are away from each other. Probably actually lower than that, but certainly nowhere where he wants to be in the pro standings. So unfortunate for Diepers there. They're certainly not going to be happy with how their race has ended, but Vitt, on the other hand, Vitt and Matuszka, they'll be extremely happy. I was going to mention, Pixley and Pope in that number 79 Ginetta have done such a phenomenal job of recovering. I mean, they had that accident right at the beginning, and both of them, they had their mindset right straight away, and very slowly, but very confidently and safely, have been climbing their way back up that field. And I tell you what, for being that far behind the entire pack, that's not a bad result for them.
No, it's not. And if they can gain 10 more seconds, they could get out of the basement of the silver class. They wouldn't even finish last in the class. So talk about a comeback performance. That would be absolutely monumental for them. The 74 is just about 10 seconds off the road from them. This is Trevor Anderson, by the way, riding on board his Porsche. That is Vasiliev in the 112. We all remember the contact and spoon from about 15 minutes ago. And Anderson driving very within the limits here, not forcing anything, but all drivers kind of are similar. You don't hit somebody or make contact with somebody and then immediately forget that. Anderson will remember some of the close encounters with the 112, and certainly is not dropping off the back of the 112. Jake Boswell, by the way, is driving away ever since he made that pass. Oh, by the way, the 7 going down the inside. Vasiliev still, that car not handling its best.
We've said it quite a lot of times now. That 112 is not looking confident anymore. They just can't seem to find the grip through any of the corners, and they're really starting to slide. I mean, I think that's probably the 6th time we've watched them slide on the camera so far, and we've not been watching too much of Vasiliev in the most recent laps, but we'll see how this happens here. Anderson not managing to find their way through despite all of these slides from Vasiliev here, but again, they've got a rather large gap ahead of them, and by the looks of it, a rather large gap behind them in their own league to hunt in the genetic behind. So Anderson looks like they've got a fairly secure second place here. It would be ideal if they could fight through the 112 Aston Martin and maybe try and close the gap to the number 30 ahead, but I'm sure for them that is not on the forefront of their mind, and when you've got a car sliding around near you like that, you do not want to be taking the risk of diving into them.
Speaking of taking risk, Kaladian has re-caught Verstappen for 5th place, but what do? Do you risk your lead in silver and try and get a top 5 that is somewhat meaningless, devoid of points anyway, or do you just continue your nice pace that you've had all race, had a nice gap the 30 car has, and walk away here with a boatload of points? I think maybe you would do that, but you can never rule out trying to make a pass here at the end of the race. Anderson and Hunt, of course, making up that top 3. Wisniewski in the 7-7, continuing to lead by quite some margin as well over the rest of the Anfield. DeBont now in the 16 Chevrolet, and Marshall in the 417. Those are your top 3 in that class. Meanwhile, Neil Pimlott, who went for a little bit of an adventure earlier, is back on the back of Phil Malter now.
We said that we were surprised at the Alpines not being able to perform so far in this race. Of course, the 747, currently driven by Verstappen, was starting in 9th, I believe, so very low down for all the Alpines that we've seen so far this season. Verstappen has managed, with the help of their teammate, to put themselves back up into 5th, but like you said, they're under pressure from the car behind them. I don't think Kalataya is a particular stranger to Verstappen. Of course, they have raced each other before, despite being in separate classes, so I imagine that will be a pretty interesting fight between those two once it comes down to it and they're close enough. Pimlott right now, though, is looking to find their way through the number 4 BMW ahead. Currently a little bit too far back to really make a move, and of course that is a BMW ahead of them as well, so the amount of moves they can make is limited, as the BMW will outpace the Aston Martin on the straight, but it's not over yet, and I tell you what, Pimlott is not someone who you want behind you.
Well, if Pimlott does want to get this position away, he's going to have to do something fancy in the braking zones because, like you said, a BMW on the straightaway, it's no contest for any other manufacturer, really. So you're going to have to get it done in the braking zones or in the twisty stuff one way or another. Staying actually quite close there was Neil Pimlott. I was actually surprised he was so close, looking around the outside and gets covered right before the braking zone to the triangle. Nice little ticky-tack battle going on here for the 13th place position. Neither one of these drivers are in a very big position to gain on anything else, so why not here at the end of the race each other? Well, I have briefly done the math, as you might expect, and confirmed my earlier hypothesis that the 25 and the 878 will likely have a winner-take-all fight in 1 week's time. Phil Vitt and Wolf Matushka will have a decent lead, and I think what will eventually happen is the 878 has to win the race, and Pink Performance will have to finish 5th or worse to lose the championship next week.
I mean, looking at that peak performance car so far in this championship, that is not a likely result. Both Fit and Machushka have done so well in that Mercedes, and I don't think they've ever been below fifth in one of these races at any point in time. So that is going to be a very tall order for the 878 with Fischer and Foch there. But again, both very good drivers, so it is certainly possible for the Aston Martin, and we will all see how all of that plays out next week. That is, of course, assuming that both of these cars finish in the order they do. They're not threatened by anyone in particular. Of course, they've both got very large gaps to the next nearest car, but that doesn't mean that accidents can't happen, and we have seen a fair few so far. Of course, although they're not fighting anyone for position on track, blue flags do exist, and we have seen in previous races, although they don't necessarily mean to, those blue flags can accidentally be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Someone who's not in the wrong place at the wrong time, though, is Anderson here, as he looks for his move on Vasiliev. He has been trying to get through for a very long amount of laps down. It looks like it's not quite going to be the chance he was looking for, as he can't quite manage to hold it on the inside for the entire corner. The 112 Aston Martin will stay ahead of the Porsche behind him.
Well, that answers my question. I was wondering if Trevor Anderson might just be riding out the clock here for Redline. Well, no, not the case at all. The Redline Porsche is very much trying to get a spot away from a pro car, which again is his right. Meanwhile, Neil Pimlott still trying to get this spot away from Phil Malter here down into turn one. Can't do it, not close enough this time through. Time running out, only about 10.5 minutes left to go. 10:16 p.m. in sim time. The track has cooled by a couple of degrees, nothing too dramatic or drastic this evening. Still very warm out there. Of course, we talk a lot about the 1.8 update. What did it do? It sort of took some of the pace out of all the cars. Didn't matter if it was GT3s, Porsche Cup, or GT4s. Took a little pace out. I know a lot of the esports pros were kind of struggling with that a little bit. Had a little bit of an identity crisis last week of, oh, I'm not as fast as I used to be. And just not the case. It's not you, it's the car, genuinely. And I think that's the same thing happening here, as Phil Malter getting a little bit sideways, exiting the Degners there. Kept Pimlott really close. What can they do here?
Phil Malter and Pimlott have been shooting around every part of the track. I mean, both of them have gone from inside to outside. They've gone a little bit off, a little bit wide, really eaten the curbs. They are getting very racy with each other as we come just under the 10 minutes left of the race here. So if Pimlott wants to get through, he does need to now do it soon. Of course, we say this is an hour and 20-minute race. There's plenty of time to overtake. There is no longer plenty of time to overtake, as Pimlott is going to be able to capitalise on the fact that Phil Malter has gone wide there on the corner. Pimlott in the 913 Aston Martin will find his way through the number 4 BMW and now turns their sight ahead to Hunt in the 303 Ginetta.
I just felt like you could see that coming. Phil Malter was having issues keeping the car on the racetrack, perhaps pushing a little bit too hard, trying to stay in front of Pimlott. Having a little fun at the end of the race, no doubt, and just got it a bit wrong one too many times. Neil Pimlott, a veteran, is not going to let too many of those opportunities go. This is Richard Pixley in the 79. This is the Wild Things Racing team. They were the last place car at the end of lap one, and they fought back inside the top 20 and continue to gain on Devant in front. Matter of fact, that is Devant Chevrolet. And in fact, there is the entire group in front of them. I think the 74 is in that group, and in fact is. So what can Pixley do here with a couple of opportunities late in the race?
Pixley has got some cars lining up. Of course, Foch, I believe, was actually leading that group. Must have been coming through some blue flags there. You can see their blue and orange car disappearing into the distance as the Aston Martin fights their way through the back markers. But Pixley's got a lot of people lined up ahead of them, and we've seen just how good this 79 Ginetta has been at catching up and overtaking in the race so far. So, well, Demont's in a different class, but the Alpine 74 is certainly not. So Pixley is going to want to overtake these guys and try and put themselves up in the standings a little bit. Of course, they had an unfortunate start to the race where they met the wall, to put it bluntly, at the expense of a little crash that had happened ahead of them. So again, for the fact that they've managed to stick with it, catch up and start overtaking cars, just shows how confident and really the determination to put themselves back in this race here.
Yeah, I think for Pixley, I think you would want to get by Gray in the 74 just to make it sort of make yourself feel a little bit better. I don't think they have anything that they did wrong in this race. Was just a victim of circumstance, but anybody you get by is a small victory. If you can beat somebody in your class after having a major incident like that, you can see the battle scars through the windscreen of Pixley's car. Unknown if they fix this car in pit lane. Sometimes there's this weird graphical issue that it doesn't show, but going down the inside into the hairpin, it's going to be a late break. Nearly shoving a car off track. Was there contact between DeBon and Pixley? I don't know, but Pixley comes out with that position and now focuses on Gray in front. A battle for position and 17th place right at the end of this race. That is Gray's little Alpine, and what a race this will be. Alpine versus Ginetta in the final 6 minutes.
I think DeBont's going to be a little angry with how that turned out, with Pixley going for that move down the inside there. I think there was a little bit of contact. Oh, there's apparently no contact, I think, so they didn't hit each other, but certainly looked like DeBont's options were limited going through that corner. Of course, the Ginetta appeared out of nowhere for them, but I was going to mention it. If you're in an AM class and you're sandwiched between two silvers who are very close, one of which is eager to climb as much as possible, that is one of the ones where you want to just cut your losses and get out of the way. I mean, you absolutely don't have to. There is nothing telling you to get out of the way, and you're allowed to race them as well, but Pixley, very eager to get through here, was always going to start making some very rash decisions, but you can see them now. They're coming up behind Gray in the Ginetta 79. Gray's in the Alpine 74. Will Pixley be able to make it through in the last 5 minutes? I don't know, but I certainly think it's going to be a very close fight, Jesse.
Something's happened up front. Felix Deepers, who had a 3.5, 4-second lead, is now back to second place. I'm forced to believe that the Lutz Motorsports 99 has had some sort of accident, some sort of spin. Phil Vitt, who was going to win this race anyway, has been promoted to first officially here. Meanwhile, Trevor Anderson, trying to go the long way, is going to run out of room here in turn one, over the beach, over the curb, and back onto the racetrack. No harm, no foul, but a very long way through turn one is Trevor Anderson. And Tom Bryant driving somewhat slowly down the front straightaway. They've had their struggles today. No teammate for Tom Bryant and a couple of accidents to boot. Tom told us to expect some accidents out of the HWT Motorsport team today, and, well, certainly delivered on that account.
Points for trying. I mean, there's certainly an effort coming out of Tom Bryant here, and I do respect it, of course. Looks like he's had a lot of hardships so far. Not all of them have been his fault, though. He was another one that got caught up in an unfortunate accident earlier on the race.
Spun back across the track, I remember, yeah.
Yes, unfortunate accident, I think was a light way of putting it from me there, but certainly not the race Tom would have wanted, so we'll see whether he can bite back next week in the final race of the season. Someone who's looking to bite back from this race is Pixley, who is finding himself right behind Gray right now. Not managing to find their way through just yet, but you can see them get very close. That's actually a bit of a tap there from Pixley, giving Gray ahead a little bit of a shunt through the corner. We'll see. I imagine they'll let Gray stay ahead on the straight here, but they don't have to. They might get penalised if they don't. But the Ginetta not quite finding their way through the Alpine yet, although certainly looking like they'll have an advantage going into this corner here on the Alpine. This Ginetta, very, very feisty, must I say, Jesse Lee.
Well, you're desperate. You've had a bad race. A lot of that not your fault. If we're talking about the Wild Things Racing team, and now you're telling me I have a shot at overtaking somebody in my class, a meaningful overtake, I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot, and that's exactly what is happening there. Carlos here, by the way, getting battled for the 5th place position. Verstappen staying just in front, as Catalani trying to get something here. The size difference is almost comical between these two cars. But this is a fight for 5th overall, and this is the silver leader battling the 5th place car in Pro. And just like earlier when we saw what was it, Phil Malter and Pimlott going at it, and Anderson and Vasiliev. Now we have a very similar thing where Verstappen and Catalodi going at each other here in the final moments. It's one of those things, Tim, you said earlier, if you have nothing else, you're going to race the nearest person to you. The only problem with that is Martin Lawrence is in the background, and if the 30, Carlos starts racing Verstappen here, maybe Martin Lawrence could get in the top 5.
Maybe he can. Pimlott actually finding his way through the Ginetta ahead of him, manages to put himself up into 12th place here. Pimlott does a very textbook overtake there on the start-finish straight from the Aston Martin 913. Going back though to what you were saying, and actually, oh no, not quite, that was my eyes playing tricks on me there, but what we were saying about the fight for 5th so far, originally that number 30 Aston Martin was behind the Alpine, which means at some point Carlos found his way through the Verstappen. Again, there's another battle happening here between Gray and Pixie. This time Pixie did not make the mistake of punting Gray, so will be able to come through on their own terms here on the corner. Gray will have to yield that position completely as they don't have the power on the straight to hold off the Ginetta. Anderson now looking for their way once again through Vasiliev. This is rather upsetting, I say, for the Porsche. They have been looking for a way through this Aston Martin since the pit stops and just haven't been able to find it. Lawrence, though, we said they're going to be joining the fight for 5th place. They found their way through the number 30 Aston Martin. They will now be turning their attention to the Alpine just ahead. This is what Verstappen had to fear with all of the battling with the Aston Martin behind him. And now it has come to a point. There is only 20 seconds left in the race, which means I believe they might have one more lap. I'm not quite sure where the number 25 is currently, but I'm being told this is the last lap. This is, I can now see them on the map. This is the last lap for the people fighting for 5th place right now. Will Lawrence be able to get through Verstappen in the last few corners in Sector 3? Or will it be enough of a gap for Verstappen just to be able to hold Lawrence off? You will find out in the last lap of Season 5, Race 5 of the GT4 Championship.
Well, it's very close here. Martin Lawrence now having to defend from Carlos in the 30 now. That's going to do nothing but hurt them. And Jesus is my teammate, BMW team. Of course, in reference to Martin Lawrence there, but let's talk about Pink Performance. Phil Vitt's going to bring home the number 25 AMG across the line. They've had a fastest lap. They've had a pole position. They've had 2 podiums. And finally, in round 5, a win for Pink Performance. An excellent job. Felix Deepers will come across the line in second, but will get a 130-second penalty. Samir Foch will come across the line in the boring but fast Aston and take home second place, confirming the championship challenge going into the final week. It'll be second for the 878. And what about Juraj Spinček for the Sind Ministers? The 871 team have had a struggle of a season, but today they have taken a Chevrolet and they've put it on the 3rd step of the podium. An excellent result for them.
And this is the fight now for 9th place as Anderson is still looking for his way through the 112 ahead of him. It doesn't look like it's going to happen, but this is a cross-class race, so although Anderson has given it a valiant effort, it ultimately will not matter points-wise. He will be taking home second in the championship for silver right now. The number 30 Aston Martin, he will be taking home 1st place for silver. Anderson in the Porsche will be coming second. And if all things go well, Hunt should be taking home 3rd place, although he's not quite out of it yet. He still has Phil Malter behind him in the number 4 BMW. As long as he doesn't mess up the last few corners here, he should be able to bring it home for the number 303 Ginetta team. We will see if he can manage to do it. It's looking good so far, although the number 4 BMW is closing in on him. This is the fight for the podium in the Silver Championship. We will see if the Ginetta has it in it to keep it ahead. It looks like they're going to as they go onto the final straight now. We know the BMW has speed, but does it have enough speed to make the drag race to the start-finish line? It looks like it might be able to do it, but I'm not sure it will, as the Jetta will be coming across the line in third place. Jay Hunt in the 303 Ginetta will be your podium third place for the Silver Championship.
Wow, what a race it ended up being. By the way, Felix Deepers there, as you can see, ended up finishing 14th overall. Neil Pimlott in the 913, in fact, finishing in front of Felix, rather unfortunately, taking that penalty. The results confirmed their top five. Phil Vitt, Samir Fosh, Svenchek, Verstreppen, Lawrence, the top five, Boswell, and of course, Kaladian is your winner in silver. Wisniewski, your winner in the AM class. It's been a long road for Pink Performance to get a win. They've done everything but that this season, Tim Peck, and when it matters most, they finally got it done. And perhaps even more important, they have a nice lead going into the final race of the season.
They do have a very, very comfortable lead going into the final race. Of course, we will be at Kailami next week for round 6 of this championship. That will be the final race. But as you said, it is not completely over. Fisher and Foch, they have a chance to strike back. If they manage to come first next week and the Pink Performance card doesn't manage to get, we don't know the exact result, but we imagine it's somewhere around 5th. It will be a case of the Fisher and Foch team managing to bring it home. But that will be next week's story, as we'll find out what happens in the Pro Championship over at Kailami next week.
Yes, indeed. Well, we'll have to see what anyone can do about Pink Performance. They've had such a great season. It's been a bit of a roller coaster ride, they'll have to admit, but it all has come together near the end. Join us next week for the finale. And why not like, subscribe, hit the bell for more GT racing action? We'll be right back with you tomorrow night, myself and Ryan Mawson, for the continuation of the GT3 Championship. And of course, back on Monday for the Porsche Cup. And myself, Tim Peck, and Christian Stricker will be back with you for the conclusion of GT4 in 1 week. No night out this week due to Endurance Championship Racing. Once again, a big thank you to all of our partners that make this race and every race possible. RaceDepartment.com, your source for mods and sim racing nude, AK Informatica, for hosting our service. Driver61, you can use our discount code at driver61.com. Get 25% off your driver coaching there. Fanatec, feel free to use our affiliate link for purchasing excellent sim racing, top quality hardware. And simracing.gp, if you are tired of the pub racing scene, join simracing.gp. Get in there. It is free and it is excellent alternative to pub racing. What a race we saw today, and it was very interesting to say the least. Well, on behalf of everybody here at RCI, I've been Jesse Lee, joined by Tim Peck and Christian Stricker. We'll see you next week. Have a good night.